All right, let's do this one more time. Um, the game this week, the bucket game, the 98th bucket game. They've played longer than that, IU and Purdue. They've played for 124 times previously in program history, but the old Oaken Bucket didn't come into play until the early 1900s. The rivalry dates back all to the 1891, I think, is their very first meeting, and Purdue won like 60 to nothing. Then the year after that, they won 68 to nothing. If you if you are going back into the history of this game, and I mean, guys, this is just a game that is between two teams that are just trying to get to the finish line, and I think they're coming at it from just slightly different perspectives, slightly different situations. Um, you have a team in Indiana that is trying to save its coach's job, and a first year head coach with Purdue that is trying to gain some positive momentum going into the offseason, where you have a good recruiting class. You feel like you have pieces that are coming back that are going to be experienced because they've been playing this season with a lot of those younger guys. So I think maybe two programs, maybe they have the same record, maybe trending in just slightly different different. Di- Jeez, a Pete, if I could speak, different directions here. So let's talk about it. See if we can gather anything that'll be illuminating. I'm gonna definitely try because this is a game that's not going to be all that fun to watch. Maybe it was. It's a rivalry game. Throw the records out. Let's not even talk about them anymore, except for maybe once or twice. This is the Behind the Rails of the Purdue Football Podcast on the Believe Network, presented by Bet Online. The holiday season is off and rolling. The NFL is in full stride, and the NBA and NHL seasons are hitting their mid-season form. BetOnline is your number one destination for all your sports wagering info with up to the minute sports wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions. BetOnline is the top spot for everything pro and amateur sports. And it's not just the big four. BetOnline has info available at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access at any time for almost any sport that is played. From MMA to international soccer, head to BetOnline and remember to use the promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. These two teams, like I said, meeting for the 125th time in their program's history. If you're watching the show and you're normally an avid listener or watcher on YouTube, we are in a different location. It might sound just a little bit different. We're in the bedroom. Don't want to get too scandalous, but um, the office is being currently occupied by some family that is here for Thanksgiving. So if you do celebrate Thanksgiving, which I believe probably most of us here in the Midwest do, hopefully you have are listening to this on the way to your Thanksgiving. If you're traveling, you know, just to give you a 20 to 30-minute break from listening to music that's on repeat on the radio or to your old sports show that is boring and mundane. And you might think this is boring. And I try not to make it be. I try to have a little bit of fun with it because you got to have some fun when you're talking about a 3-win team. And this week we get to talk about two of them. These two teams have combined to win 2 games since the calendar flipped to October. And both of them come recently. A couple weeks ago, Indiana beat Wisconsin. Purdue beat, Minnesota. I had a brain fart. It's been a very rarity that we've talked about wins on this program here this year. So it should come easily because they have so few wins. But after you watch this team, everything starts to blend together. If you're a Purdue fan or an IU fan as well, because you've kind of seen the same kind of crap over and over again. And it's just teams, both of these teams shoot themselves in the foot. Both these teams have mediocre at best defenses when you look at the numbers. Their offenses aren't very good either. I mean, if you look at like the national rankings for things that the NCAA keeps track of, IU only does like one thing that ranks in the top 35, and that's penalties. They're like one of the fewest penalized teams in the country. Uh, Purdue's top thing is rushing offense, which has come online here in the last few weeks. So that's one thing that you can kind of hang your hat on if you are Purdue. And I just think that this is going to be a week that Purdue is still going to be able to run the ball a lot and have success with it. You're getting Hudson Card back. You're getting Nick Scorton back, according to Ryan Walters in his press conference this week. So I think that the offense will run much more smoothly than it did with Ryan Brown or Bennett Meredith last week. So if Hudson Card is available, healthy, I don't expect him to be 100%. I don't think he's been 100% since the Illinois game. And we'll see how much he uses his legs. I think you have a defense that is kind of like Purdue's, where you have some standouts. Aaron Casey for IU is one of their best guys. He has 6 straight games with at least 8 tackles. He's on pace to break 100 tackles this season. Casey is incredible. He's been all over the field. PFF ranks him very high. Pro Football Focus, Andre Carter, Josh Swignetti, also another guy on the defense that you should be looking at on the back end. Has a kind of ball hawking kind of skills. Um, I just think that Andre Carter is going to be the one to watch. Getting after Hudson Card in the backfield or breaking through and making tackles on Tyrone Tracy, who I think is going to be 100% to go this week, with what Ryan Walters alluded to this week. So I I just think this is an opportunity for Purdue to finish the season strong. It's the same for IU. Um, get that fourth win doesn't really mean a ton, but if you think about IU and where they're at, Tom Allen's he had the program at a really high level during 2020, and they were a top 10 team with Michael Penix on the roster, and ever since then, back downhill to where IU has been for the majority of its program. Most years, IU is between 4 and 7 wins, depending on how good they are offensively. Most of the time they've been pretty mediocre to very bad on defense, and they've had these high flying offenses. And they've under Tom Allen more than likely been a defensive forward team, even though still the defenses have never been super spectacular. They've played well against the big three in the Big Ten East for the most part. Aside from Michigan, they only played well with them for about a quarter. I think they led 7-0 after the first quarter. But against Penn State and Ohio State, those games were at least close for a long time. All the way back in the season opener for the Ohio State game. But recently against Penn State, they were able to hold them down and had that game within the grasp in the fourth quarter on the road as well. So I I think if IU shows up for a big game, or a game that has some stakes to it, or is a team that's better than them, I think they play to that level. And I think that defensively is they are better than their offense. Their offense is pretty average. They have some playmakers. Jalen Lucas, I'm not sure if he's going to play. I think he really didn't have an impact. He didn't have any catches or anything of significance last week against Michigan State. Donovan McCulley is their top receiver, and he's really shined over the last handful of games. They have a decent enough rushing attack. Brendan Sorsby runs a little bit as well, and that's given Purdue some sort of trouble this season when you're talking about a mobile quarterback. But for the most part, they've held them in check. So if you're going to put the game on Sorsby's shoulder, I think you should be fine. I think if you play a similar level to what you've been playing here in these last 2 weeks, you should win this game. I mean, if you just have a more veteran quarterback, if Hudson Card plays that game last week against Northwestern, they win. There's no doubt in my mind they win. But you have a couple of backup quarterbacks that are inexperienced, running a simplified version of the offense, and Ryan Brown was the only one who really was competent enough to run that offense with confidence and do some things that you know weren't really playing to Benedict Meredith's strengths. Brown ran the ball quite a bit, and we'll see if Brown actually does get a few snaps and actually run it. Run a read option and keep it and see if he can get, a big chunk yardage. I think he did that a handful of times where he picked up some significant yards last week. So let's see if he can do that this week. So let's see if he gets in the game. I think if he would probably take priority over Meredith if they were going to play play two quarterbacks or spell Card to try and keep him healthy for 4 quarters on Saturday. But it's going to be a game that I think is going to be close. I think with both these teams and how they have played recently. IU has been in both of their games the last 2 weeks. They went to overtime with Illinois. They lost last week against Michigan State, where they probably should have won, or at least taken that game to overtime as well. They missed a game-tying field goal in the last minute or two. So IU has been there with the teams that are on similar level as them, and they've played up to the competition that's better than them. So I'm expecting IU to play to the level of Purdue, or play up as a rivalry game should be played. I think it'll be a game that Purdue needs to win for some potential recruiting battles. They need to win for some positive momentum going into the offseason. I think that a game like this can have some effect on certain guys, and maybe unless they've already made the decision that hey, we're gonna leave, but or we're gonna jump in the transfer portal. Ryan Walters spoke a little bit to that on Monday, that it would. I think he may have had some conversation with some guys, but he said if there's a surprise or two, that it 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 would be surprising. I think they might be a couple, but he said that if Walters wants them to stay, he feels that more than likely they'll keep him. So I would expect handful, maybe more, to jump in the portal, but if they have eligibility and they want to see this thing through with Walters for one more year, I think if you bring in a recruiting class, you bring in some portal transfers, you keep some of the productive pieces that you've had on your roster this year, I think you could be looking at a team that is going to be better than this season's team. And maybe those, close wins or close losses to Northwestern, those games that you're in till the very end against, Syracuse, Fresno State, Iowa, Nebraska for the longest time, those turn into wins. Maybe not. But I think that there is still some talent on this team. I think that it's not just going to be a year that is going to be as bad as it was this year. I think Walters will make some pretty sweeping changes. Hopefully, I think on the offensive side it's needed. I know he had some commenters in the YouTube stream of the recap show of the game last week, and was like, how could you be calling for some changes when you have and he said it, young coaches across the board. And oh, I don't think Graham Harrell's a young coach. He's been around the game for a long time. I mean, he played back in the early 2000s. and he's had stops as an offensive coordinator, and nobody has really felt happy about him. I gave him a chance because I think at West Virginia he wasn't, the all-out play caller. He wasn't the one that was calling the plays. It was Neil Brown. It was Neil Brown's offense, and I was giving Ryan Walters a chance to hand it over to Graham Harrell and see if he would be, more open. And I just don't like some of the decisions, and we've been talking about it all season long, especially in the short yardage situations. And it's just something that we haven't been able to, see a whole lot of progress in. When you get down inside the 5 with this team, you're thinking, what are we going to do besides run the ball up the middle? Because I can guarantee you at least once or twice that it's going to be a run up the middle, and that's just not how you want to run this team. So let's talk a little bit more about this game. I think Purdue needs to have a much better start than what it did against Northwestern. You can't just let a team go down and score in 4 plays like it did the last 2 weeks. You can't give IU momentum. I think there's going to be a good enough crowd that you want to keep these fans engaged the entire time right from the start. And I don't think IU has the firepower to just absolutely, score 40 points in this game. I don't see this being a back and forth game. I see this game playing out like it has, for quite some time, or for the last few weeks for both these teams. I know IU put up over 40 points in their overtime loss to Illinois, but I don't think that is going to be the case. I think Illinois' defense just went straight downhill this year. I thought they were going to be a ton better, but I just think defensively both teams are good enough. They do things that are good enough that will stop the opposing team. I think Purdue's front 7 going up against an experienced, big offensive line for IU can cause some problems for the Boilermakers, but I still think they'll get pressure on Sorsby. I think they'll still be able to slow down the rushing attack. I just don't think that IU is going to be able to run all over them. They're going to have to beat them through the air like teams have. And when you have, Zion Steptoe, Derek Rogers, Marcavius Brown out there, and you're going to be able to throw on this team as you have. I would like to see some improvement from Zion Steptoe because he got burnt early. I think he played better as the game went on, though. But there were still too many times early on, and we'll see if IU tries to pick on him. I would game plan to pick on him, but I just don't think IU has enough explosiveness outside of Lucas, and we'll see what his production will be like, if any, going into this week. If you can hold down McCulley, I think IU has been kind of beat up at that position this season, so we'll have to see. I think Purdue's offense will be able to run. I think they'll still be able to move the ball like they have effectively here in these last few weeks. And I think the offense has been able to move on its opponents for the majority of its games this season. It's about finishing drives and finishing them with touchdowns. You can't go into this game wanting to settle for field goals. First of all, your field goal unit has been so bad this year that I wouldn't trust it at all. So I would hope that the offense continues to do its thing, continues to hammer the run game, because IU's not super taught up front that I still think you should be able to run on this defense. So I know we promised Shannon Griffith. He has been sick, so he was not able to do the preview with me like we had hoped. Maybe we can get together on a recap show, which, as you know, will come out on a Sunday morning after the game on Saturday. So thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully you guys are having a happy and safe Thanksgiving. My prediction on this game before we get out of here. I'm going to predict a Purdue win. Not going to give a score. I just think they'll win. I think they'll win by a close margin, less than a touchdown. So that's what I'm thinking. Um, if you look at the betting lines provided by Bet Online, it's a -3 for Purdue. They're favored by 3 points, but when you get 3 points for home field advantage across the board, it's not really. It's kind of like a pick'em type game. Over under about 50 points, so it's a game in the 20s, and that's why I think it'll be a game in the 20s that'll be separated by less than a touchdown. So hopefully it's an entertaining game. Hopefully it's entertaining throughout, or it's Purdue domination, which could happen. Who knows? So thank you so much for joining me out here from the comforts of my bedroom. But thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of the Behind the Rails of Purdue football. Make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you follow me on social media if you would like. But make sure you follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts or watch on YouTube as well. The show has been presented by Bet Online. I've been your host, Brice Vance, and I will see you guys on Sunday.